from executive session. We'll reconvene from executive session for the town council meeting of October 16th, 2024. The time is now 5:35. I hereby wrong form. In the executive session has been concluded. Participants in the executive sessions were myself, Eric Gottelf, Tom Priest, Gusty Kanekis, Kate Schifani, and Lynn Fighter. And of course, Brian was absent. Sorry, I couldn't help. Okay, so with that, Town Manager Michelle Mateer. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I ask that you state your concerns for the record. Hearing none, next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull any item on that?
Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
Sorry, did I skip something? Oh, of course. Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. Now we will get to the approval of the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Eric seconds.
Motion by Gusty, second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have approval of the regular agenda. Do we have any modifications?
Yes.
Okay. Do we hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda as presented.
8 seconds.
Motion by Gusty, second by Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have declaration of conflicts of interest. Does any member of the board have any conflict of interest with any item on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on. Now's the segment for public comment. If there's anyone here that would like to make a comment on any item that is not on the agenda, please come forward and state your name and address.
Tim McMahon, Avon. And I don't know, and that's why I'm bringing it to you guys because you guys are a lot smarter than me. I don't know like financials, midterm, stuff like that. But a possible solution to vacant buildings on Main Street is having town subsidize the rents for them. I know 151 Main, they've been asking $4,000 for, but Thai Kitchen right next door pays $2,000 a month for. And, possible thing, I know there's a bunch of food trucks, going into winter, food trucks aren't as profitable, especially here. And I know a couple even that are around town that would definitely move into that space for $2,000. And then all of a sudden you don't have a vacant building on Main Street, which brings more people in anyways, which helps all the other businesses. So I don't know if that's even possible or anything, but you guys are a lot smarter. So bring it to you guys, maybe you guys have a conversation about it or something. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone else have a comment on anything? Jay, you got anybody out there?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll move on. Next, we have council comments and committee reports. Lynn? Okay. Ryan?
We had a Minturn Fitness Center meeting, and pretty much the revenues are up and membership is up. And the biggest thing on it is we passed a rule that there's no dogs allowed at the MFC. Not that it's been a big problem, but we passed it. Another note, I'm on the High Five board, and I want to thank them. They're here tonight, and looking forward to our meeting next week. Looking forward to be part of your team. So thank you.
Thank you, Gusty. Tom? No? Eric?
Just a quick update from the Climate Action Collaborative. We've been having some good continued discussion on net zero and kind of where, hopefully building codes and direction of the county and other municipalities are moving towards. Hopefully have some more info on that later. I'll bring it up again in the future agenda items, but just want to give you guys an update that Climate Action Collaborative is going well and trying to save us all.
Thank you, Eric. Just want to say this is the last council meeting before our most important holiday of Halloween. So everybody dress up their house, dress up yourself, and be safe out there. Another thing I want to bring up is Minturn has a ballot question concerning the short-term rentals. We're increasing our lodging tax. You'll see it as stated as an excise tax, which is what it is. But just want to make sure everybody understands that the 5% increase is not something that will in any way affect Minturn residents. It will just raise the rate of short-term rentals to the rentals. So that's it. So we're raising 5% from, was it 2%?
Jay, is it 1% right now?
1%, okay.
It's 1.5%.
1.5.
1.5%. Okay, so we'll end up with 6.5 then,
Yes, sir.
if this ballot issue is approved by our citizens. And also, another kind of elections going on. So on November 5th, please get out and vote. Everybody's vote counts, and it's important that y'all take it seriously and educate yourself and vote the way you feel is best. And that's it. Next is on the agenda is staff reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't have this in my manager's report, but Brian Rodine led a meeting with Senator Dylan Roberts and Representative Megan Lukens on Minturn's behalf regarding how we can better work with our colleagues at CDOT to find on-the-ground solutions to what seem like reasonable issues. The goal of that discussion and meeting, which was held here at Minturn Town Hall and also included representatives from Avon, was all about trying to use a logical approach to real-world problems on the ground. And although we tried to keep the conversation at a higher level above Minturn specifically, inevitably the bull bouts came up. And at which point we use that as an example of, we're trying to increase line of sight for folks, but we're also not wanting to take away, significant amounts of parking that our businesses desperately need. And how can we work to find happy mediums instead of an all or nothing approach? Brian was excellent in representing the town of Minturn, and at times I felt was appropriately passionate in expressing our deep concern for the safety of residents and visitors in this town and how we can work together with CDOT to find solutions. I have a follow-up meeting with CDOT scheduled for early November to continue those conversations. But since Brian didn't bring it up, I wanted to make sure that we hit on that.
Yeah, sorry to mention that how long week. That seems like that was 3 weeks ago.
It seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, I was, that meeting, I was very impressed by our representatives, Dylan Roberts and Megan Lukens, for their knowledge and support and showing up to that meeting when they've got other things going on for sure. Eric joined from Town of Avon, which was great, as Michelle mentioned, I think. And, CDOT, they brought a variety of staff from different levels, and I think they were saying the things that we wanted them to hear. But I kept saying the proof is in the pudding. And if you've got these people saying these things and they're saying they're supporting of us, but then there's nothing going on out there and we continue to see packed houses and no change, then, let's go prove something. Let's get some action done. So it's good to see a follow-up meeting. I think we stirred the pot well and go from there.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I began the meeting by just talking about how I have a 1 and a 5-year-old and we like to go to the park and don't feel safe doing that. So it's kind of where we're at.
All about finding ways that we can compromise with regulations that seem difficult to find compromise in. With that, though, I did receive a follow-up email from one of the CDOT representatives that was at that meeting informing us about the local agency automated vehicle identification system, aka AVIS. This is a system that would allow Minturn through the proper approvals to put up, if we remain concerned about safety on Main Street, also Highway 24, if that remains a significant concern for town residents and the council, a potential option for addressing this issue could be the AVIS program, which is essentially a speed radar device that's put on Highway 24. Some of them are permanently placed in one location, some of them are able to be moved, but this is something that a municipality and CDOT would work together for getting approvals. If this is something that continues to be an issue for the town and the town wants to move in that direction. I put the information about this program in your packet in the event that you all want to give direction to staff at a future meeting to pursue further understanding of this program. So I just throw that out there. We have a long meeting tonight. Everything else is in my packet, including the water treatment plant grant application that we applied for last Monday for another $3 million toward construction of a membrane water treatment plant. We will get the results of that grant application in March. It's incredibly competitive through the Bureau of Reclamation, but we remain hopeful given that we're in the middle of a water moratorium. I'd also like to thank those who supported us through letters in the grant application themselves. It's really kind to see our neighbors get helping Minturn through that effort. If anyone has any questions about AVIS, I'm happy to write them down and send those back to our CDOT representative to get more information. But I did feel that the program information that they included and I input in the packet was pretty thorough.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda,
Can I ask one question about the manager report?
go ahead.
You gave a Minturn North update briefly in there that said the fence will remain, and it appears that they have paved 4th Street. Do you know if the inclination is to open that for traffic and keep the rest of the construction site fenced?
That is my understanding, that's correct.
That's magical.
Yes, so once able, it's my understanding 4th will be opened, but the 2 sides will remain fenced in full.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Any other questions for the manager? Okay. Next, we have a presentation from Planning Department.
Before, on the report, I wanted to talk about fluoride in the water system for
Thank you.
this,
Okay, sure.
before we go by that item.
That's fine.
So I never understood that there was no fluoride in our water system. And as someone who grew up in an area that was opposed to fluoride and didn't have fluoride, and then myself and my siblings had 3 billion cavities. As a result, I'm wondering why we think it wouldn't be a good idea to add fluoride.
So if this is something that so I put this in the council packet because I do from time to time get questions from residents if there is fluoride in Minturn water. So I wanted to make sure that everybody's aware there is not. Minturn does not have fluoride as an additive in Minturn water. In fact, I would say Minturn is probably has the fewest additives of any municipality that I'm aware of, especially with using the slow sand filters. That being said, I wanted to make sure that all of you knew, because some organizations do put fluoride in their water for a variety of purposes. I would say there's studies out there for both positive and negative effects of fluoride, especially the effects on children. Are the most recent studies that I've seen that have come out. However, if the council wants to have a discussion about the consideration of adding fluoride to the water, I wanted to put this in here as an impetus so that you all are aware of our current position and our ability to address it any way that you might want should you decide so.
I, for one, would really appreciate a further discussion on that issue. I think it's really important one.
Okay, well, we can put it, we'll have that discussion at the future agenda items.
That's great.
Thank you.
All right. I believe we have Scott Hunt up next, our town planner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Scott Hahn with the Planning Department.
We have been hard at work for months on chapters 16 and 17, the Minturn Forward Code Update Project. But I realize we haven't been in front of council in quite a while to let you know what we're doing and the work that's been completed. So in the packet is just a brief update on the progress on that project, as well as an updated schedule, complete with a calendar. So staff, our consultant team, and everyone involved, the Planning Commission, can understand what the realistic timeframe is for completing a review of different articles of the new code and a realistic expectation for adoption date. But just to back up a second, so the Minturn Forward project is to overhaul essentially Chapter 16, which is our zoning code, and Chapter 17, which is our subdivision regulations. Both of those go hand in hand. As part of that initial work, we have really focused on the administrative sections of the code, the sections that we use most often, applicants use most often, that relate to the stakeholder comments that we got last year about this time when we reached out to people that actually use our code to say, how can we make this code more understandable, easier to implement, and not just easier for applicants, but more effective for the town. If we have a new comprehensive plan, which we do, the 2013 community plan, how do we implement the policies and goals of that plan and the strategic plan of the council best through our main tool, which is our zoning and subdivision regulations. So we started in June on that first module, which is our submittal requirements and process for all of our different land use types. We've also started work on kind of the same type of article, which will focus on subdivision application types. So really getting at the heart of what we do and really clearing up a lot of the contradictions and confusion that exist in our code right now. That's where most of that cleanup needed to happen. As you can imagine, writing that kind of new code and really isolating those problems and thinking about how to craft a better code takes time. So we have been hard at work, but it has taken quite a bit of time. We've brought 2 different articles before the Planning Commission. They have been great in really taking their time to go through each of these new articles that we're putting in front of them, giving us great comments and feedback, and then we're returning to them with revised drafts that respond to their comments. So we've gotten through Article 5, which is our land use application requirements and processes or procedures. And we've also just recently brought the same type of article before them for environmental impact reports. That's the section of the code that we can, either as staff or historically the Planning Commission can require additional studies of applicants if they think that's required. So those are the 2 sections that we brought forth so far to the Planning Commission. As our schedule lays out, we're going to get through those 2 articles. We're going to talk about subdivision application requirements with them next. Through November and into December, we're going to start talking about zone districts. That's something that I think most of the community is probably most interested in. And so we'll organize some open houses, I believe, to do that. We're going to show people what their existing zoning is and any proposed changes to zone district boundaries, the names of zone districts, and any changes to allowed uses within those zone districts. So that's kind of the next part of this, and that we expect quite a bit of public input and some public meetings. We're not going to rush that part at all. But as you may have seen from our schedule, this is going to take us until June or July to get to adoption hearings. And the goal is to work our way through these different articles, find some times in that schedule to come to council, either just presenting to you or doing a joint meeting to bring you up to speed on some of these articles that we're drafting before we get too far along, to get your input, make sure we're on the right track. But at the end of the process is when we would adopt all of those. We're not going to adopt those piecemeal because we're effectively repealing and replacing large sections of your municipal code. I'm going to stop there. There's a couple other updates on other things that we're working on, but are there any questions of what we're doing and how we're progressing?
So yes, it's been a long haul here. And the reason it is because council kept sending you different projects to do and forcing you to push this back a ways. But it's Article 5 is really quite important, and because there was a lot of conflicts within the documents the code that we had, and going back and redoing the processes and making sure everything is consistent has always been a problem, and this is a lot of work. So we appreciate you and Planning Commission's work, and excited to see it happening. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions for Scott at all?
I know when you first brought this forward, there was some discussion on kind of how we were going to take this. Was it going to be kind of a form-based or a blended or some kind of combination of all of those? What direction and how is that process going? I believe we decided on kind of like a blended code with some elements of form-based and some elements of more of like a traditional.
Yeah.
How is that going in the discussions?
I think that was great direction, and we've been kind of moving forward as we draft these different sections. And I need to give credit to Matt Farrar, Western Slope Consulting. He is the person that we chose to bring on and help us with this. He's been a great partner to work with, and we've got some good sounding boards. But based on the direction that we received, mostly a traditional code with some elements of kind of a form-based. And I think that what that's going to mean for our code is we're going to have hopefully very understandable language in our code first and foremost. And with that, we might have some graphics and other ways to describe the intent of different sections. What are we actually asking for, and what are we actually asking applicants to do, and how do you measure height, and being really clear on those types of things. I think that's the direction that we're heading. So far, I think it's working out well. We haven't gotten to the point where we're integrating or developing any graphics to go along with some of those things. When we get into the definition section, so we have a definition section of our zoning code right now, and we also have definitions scattered throughout different articles and sections of the municipal code. We're going to try to combine those, update those definitions, and with those have better graphics and illustrations on really, okay, oh, this is what they mean when they say this is how you measure building height or setbacks or things like that.
Yeah, I think that's super important. The graphics and photos and examples I think are really important, not just to define like what's possible, but really to kind of show what we're going for, especially in some of the some of the more historic districts and things. And I think it can also help developers and potential developers bring forward creative projects and say, maybe that would ask for some sort of modifications or changes or something, or exemptions, because like they see what we're trying to get to, but maybe then they find something within the code that doesn't allow them to do that, and they can come to us and say like, look, we're trying to do what you guys are trying to do, we're aligned here, but your code doesn't allow us to do this, and to give them a better idea of like where we're trying to go as a community. So cool, thanks for the update.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Scott at this time?
Just a couple other things. We've just some active land use applications. We are getting really close to seeing Midtown Village Plan Unit Development in Southtown come before Planning Commission. I think we're looking at November 13th for that first Planning Commission meeting. So that, again, that's a preliminary plan unit development application that we've been reviewing for almost over a year. So we feel like that's in a good place. It has gone through a couple different rounds of referral review with town staff and referral agencies. I think we're at a place where we've resolved questions and significant issues that we can get it in front of Planning Commission. And then Eagle County School District, Molite Park Preliminary Subdivision Plat Review. That's another application that we received late last year. We are in the referral process right now, so public agencies, our own consultant team and staff are reviewing that, and I would imagine that probably will get before Planning Commission, maybe before the end of the year, but most likely the first of the year. And then finally, we've been participating in a couple different initiatives. The Regional Housing Action Plan Group, I've been participating in that for several months. Patty Lehrman, on behalf of the town of Avon, is doing a great job leading that effort. That's a study of housing in our valley that's being spearheaded by Eagle County and the town of Avon. So kind of updating the 2018 housing needs assessment that the county did in 2018, taking another look at current data, market trends, demographics, land availability, housing cost, all those things, working with economic planning systems to crunch all those numbers. They have finally produced a report based on all the information that the different towns participating have fed them. And all the other data research that they've been doing on their own. That will start being presented to town councils up and down the valley this month. We're gonna hear from them on November 6th, so they'll kind of roll out their initial findings so we can get a much better picture of what our situation is with housing and potential opportunities to work together in the future. Part of the goal of that group is to start gauging interest and feasibility of a regional housing authority and whether that makes sense for any one of us. So, and then lastly, kind of in the same vein, the Wildland Urban Interface Group, Kevin Rindy and I have been sitting in on their meetings and participating with a valley-wide effort to take a look at what the feasibility and appetite would be for a Wildland Urban Interface Code adoption. What we found out at the last meeting, I did not attend, but Kevin attended. It sounds like the state is going to be rolling out its own Wildland Urban Interface Code that municipalities would have to adopt, or at least consider. I don't know the particulars of that, but I think it's coming. So how that affects our development regulations, our landscape design regulations, I think we've been anticipating that. And that's certainly something we might be able to deal with as we update Chapter 16 and talk about lighting standards and landscaping standards again and stuff like that. So
When were they gonna roll that out?
I think next year.
Okay, so that means you gotta put everything on hold, or are you gonna move forward with what we got now?
My understanding from what Kevin passed along from that last meeting is that they're looking at that as, you know, the state's going to give each municipality jurisdiction a chance to understand the new mandate and figure out how to adopt it to fit their community. So there'll be some opportunities for public engagement and input and feedback. So I can come back and give more particulars on that.
Sounds good. Okay. Any questions for Scott?
Just curious, the Midtown, how many SOPs do they currently have and how many are they looking for?
Probably shouldn't talk about that tonight, Tom.
Putting that bug in your ear for our discussion in December. Be nice to have the answer to that before then.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, if there's nothing else. Next item on the agenda is business items, I believe. Yep, no special presentations. So. Next item is ordinance number 11, series 2024, second reading, an ordinance amending the town's historic register to add 151 Main Street. Go ahead.
So this is second reading of the ordinance that y'all reviewed last meeting to add 151 Main Street to the historic register. So nothing has changed since that meeting. So I would be looking for council to pass this on second reading.
Thank you. So nothing's changed since first reading. Any further discussion from the board? Entertain a motion? Oh wait, public hearing. That's my favorite mess up there. It's like, do it every time. Anyway, this is now open to public. Does anyone want to speak to council on this issue?
I will say that Brian Sipes, who is an architect in one of the downtown business locations, submitted a public comment via email that was sent to all of the council members that was in support of historic preservation at these two locations.
Wasn't there one other one?
No.
No, okay. Okay, if there's no other comment, Jay, anybody else out there with their hand raised?
No, sir, there's not.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Back to council.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 11, series 2024, an ordinance of the town of Minturn amending the town's historic registry, adding 151 Main Street parcel number 2103-263-10-003.
I'll second that.
Motion by Gusty, second by Lynn. Roll call, please.
Kate, aye.
Brian, nay.
Lynn, aye.
Gusty, aye.
Tom, nay.
Eric, aye.
And Earl, aye. Next, we have ordinance number 12, series 2024, second reading, an ordinance amending the town's historic register to add 155 Main Street. So, any changes to that one?
No changes to this one.
And we have no changes since the first reading. That I will, is there any comment from council at this time? We'll open it up for public hearing.
Jay needs to turn his mic off.
Jay, anybody out there?
No, sir, there's not.
Okay, no one else wants to make a comment? Come on, we got people here. No. All right, I'll close the public hearing. Any comments from council? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve ordinance number 12, series 2024, ordinance of the town of Minturn, Colorado, amending the town's historic register, adding 155 Main Street, parcel number 2103-263-10-004.
I'll second that.
Motion by Lynn, second by Gusty. Roll call, please.
Brian, aye.
Lynn, aye.
Gusty, aye.
Tom,
Eric, aye.
And Earl, aye. Ordinance number 12 passes. Next item on the agenda is the proclamation for High Five Access Media Day. JK and Jonathan are here, but I want to say something real quick before you get up there. High Five Media Access has been an incredibly important tool for governance in our county. Not many, back in the day, there was no such entity that it was in existence for local government. And for our citizens to be able to not be able to make a meeting this evening, in the evenings, on Wednesdays, to be able to see exactly what's going on, not depend on rumor, not depend on the gossip, but watch the council meeting, and which I think is an invaluable asset. I wish a lot more people across the nation would watch governing happening. And because one of our big holes of our education system is they don't teach civics anymore. A lot of our citizens don't understand how their government works, and it's been, and we're now living the results of that. So with that, I'd like to offer you, if you have any comments, to come on up.
Is this thing on? I'm J.K. Perry, Executive Director at High Five Access Media. First off, Earl, thank you for your words. We really appreciate it. There's a lot of people in this room, we can tell, that really care about the decisions that you all are making, and they come here to all the meetings and give their public input, and they truly do steer the decisions that are being made at a local level. And I know a lot of us are disenchanted and disenfranchised with what happens at the federal level. But I've always said that if you want to make a difference, come to the Minturn Town Council meeting and talk to your representatives. You can make change. It's visible. I've got a few prepared words. I just want to say, today we've got Gusty here, Gusty Kanakis, who is the newest member of the High Five Access Media Board of Directors. Eric has helped out in the past as well. So we appreciate the both of you and for your service on the High Five Access Media Board. I also want to thank Austin Richardson over here, who sticks around late with all of you and covers all the meetings to make sure all of the citizens know what's going on in Minturn. So thanks to Austin. Also want to thank a couple other of our board members, TJ Johnson, Ruth Stanley, and Mike Griffin. Also our government access guru over here, Jonathan Zarni, for planning this proclamation. And Casey and Brett, who are on our education team, they couldn't be here tonight. They're out doing education stuff. So, just wanted to let you know about them. We also want to thank town staff. You all help us out. We hope that we can be of help to you. You support us, and we appreciate your support. And we also appreciate the support of the town council. So if you can believe it, High Five Access Media turns 40 next year. We started with a small cadre of community-minded individuals with a determination to shed light on local government, talk about issues of the day, have a bit of fun, and cause a bit of controversy. Since then, we've brought transparency to our citizens, covering 10 meetings across 7 governmental entities. We also cover elections. As many of you may know, we recently covered the Minturn Town Council election, which several of you participated in. And while many know High Five Access Media for our government coverage, that's not all that we do. On High Five, you'll learn and be entertained by events ranging from parades to concerts and educational lectures to sporting events. Volunteers and community producers create or pitch in to create all this content. These volunteers learn how to wield a camera, edit a movie, or light a scene through our workshops, youth summer camps, and high school clubs. We provide racks of equipment to community producers for free, eliminating the financial barrier to expensive professional grade gear. And finally, we provide an electronic soapbox for free speech on cable television, streaming, social media, apps on your smart TV. Whether it's a traditional or emerging platform, it's all available to you. It's a home for all voices, whether rich or poor, gay or straight, white or black, Democrat or Republican, to share their stories with friends, family, and neighbors. The impact that we're having on the community and the impact that the community has on us is evident every day. We give the socioeconomically disadvantaged a chance to succeed in the workplace, and those with special needs an opportunity to hone their skills in a caring environment. We see those success stories and they bring our staff and board joy. Across the landscape, media outlets are controlled by fewer and larger companies. Local sources of news, so important to democracy, are drying up. We're very lucky here to have High Five, the Vail Daily, some news stations, Radio Free Minturn. This proclamation and support from our community shows that our valley believes in community media. We truly are lucky to have a platform like High Five Access Media. Thank you all for your support and partnership. We couldn't do it without you.
Thank you, JK. Appreciate your time and all of you. Really do. And with that, did you want to say anything?
I was just going to ask if we could get a photo with you all before.
Sure. Well, let me read the
Before you're
proclamation
done.
and then we'll stand up with you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay. So I like to read proclamations when they come around. So, whereas the sharing of ideas and information helps to empower the local community as well as build common understanding and common values within the community. And whereas community media organizations provide a means for diverse communities to tell their stories, hear each other's stories, create new stories together. And whereas community media organizations provide people with the skills necessary for creation, sharing, and consumption of knowledge and ideas through the media. And whereas the community media is an important resource for participating in local democratic policy and processes. And whereas community media connects community organizations, schools, local governments to their constituents so that they can become civically engaged, express ideas, and advocate for causes. And whereas in many communities, people are not aware of the diverse and valuable programming on public education and government access channels or community radio channels. And whereas communities will benefit from increased general awareness of and viewing audience for and creators of media content created by and for the community. Now therefore be it resolved that October 20th, 2024 is hereby proclaimed as Hi-Fi Access Media Day within the town of Minturn, and all people are hereby called upon to promote the importance of community media, training available at Hi-Fi Access Media, and programming available on Channel 9 on cable.
Channel 5.
Huh?
We're Channel 5.
I thought I said Channel 5. No, okay, Channel 5 on cable, not on satellite. That's what I use. Oh well. But also streaming. I'll add that. So be it further resolved that Hi-Fi Access Media plays a vital role in the building of our community by broadcasting local government meeting to locals, second homeowners, and visitors alike, as well as encouraging conversations about our common interest and increasing discourse around policy issues, fostering understanding of local cultures, broadcasting local events, and sharing information to improve our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. How are you? Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, get in here.
Come on in. All right.
Steph will know what to do here.
Let's stack together.
A little bit.
25. Yeah, there it is. Who's first?
Take 1,000.
I can go.
What do you want to say? Everyone say high five.
There you go.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Gusty.
See you next week.
Yeah, sounds good. That's all right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good to see you too, man. Good to see you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
That was a groovy appetizer plate.
Yeah.
Next agenda item is Resolution 53, Series 2024, a resolution supporting a grant application for planning funds to design and engineer the repair and replacement of Bellum Bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the town has been undertaking, with the help of SEH and Intermountain Engineering's SEH is here tonight. They are a structural engineering firm that is specific to working with us through the Bellum Bridge feasibility study. So they have been taking a look at Bellum Bridge, studying its current status so that we can better understand if we need to do a repair of the bridge or a replacement of the bridge, pending on costs associated with each option. As you all know, we've received some CDOT bridge inspections over the last several years that have indicated we should be looking in this direction. So with that, I will turn it over to Jeff in case you want to add. Don't look at me surprised. In case you want to add any additional information on that background before we turn it over to Parsa, who's here tonight, to go over the items in your packet and to answer any questions. As is identified in the memo in your packet, staff is requesting approval through a resolution to be able to apply for a grant, which is due November 1st, for what is it, Parsa, about 380,000 for the planning, design and engineering of what a bridge would look like. Is that right?
The CDOT reports over the years, what the problem with Bellin Bridge, it's 70 years old for one, and there's a lot of corrosion and problems underneath with the steel bridge. But the biggest problem is scour. The river is undermining the foundation for the bridge. So what CDOT has had us do for the last several years is we monitor the bridge once a month to see if it's moving. And fortunately, it hasn't moved anywhere. So they actually, the last report we got from CDOT said it was critical and we had to do something within 90 days. And we submitted the results of the survey to them, and they backed off and just said we need to continue to monitor the bridge to see if there's any problems. So, but they did say that we needed to undertake a study, a structural study of the bridge, which is why SEH was brought on board.
So with that, you all approve the contract for SEH to come on board, conduct the feasibility study, which started this last spring. They have really done a great job in getting this feasibility study conducted in time for us to be able to apply specifically for the bridge grant cycle. The bridge grant cycle is incredibly competitive and only has $15 million available in this cycle through the program that we would be applying for. So our application for a construction of either a repair or replacement would not be competitive given that we are not shovel ready. So what our strategy is would be to get approval for the work to design and engineer either repair or replacement so that we can then apply for those funds, hopefully do the design and engineering over this next year, and then come back in 2025 with a grant application for either repair or replacement. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Parsa if you want to come to the podium and talk a little bit about the feasibility work that your team has done. And it's Parsa Kolahi. Thank you. Oh, I almost got it. Thank you. So thank you so much. Parsa drove up here from Denver to be here in person tonight, given that it's such an important topic to us.
Thank you, Michelle. Hello, everyone. My name is Parsa Kolahi. I'm a bridge engineer and a project manager with SEH. I've been with SEH for 3.5 years and been in the industry for about, 14 years. And yeah, we were selected by the town to perform a feasibility study and a life cycle cost analysis on Bellin Bridge to determine, to help the town decide what they want to do with the bridge in the long term. As Jeff mentioned, there are some problems with the bridge. The biggest one being scour and channel and the settlement. All of our alternatives, bridge alternatives, address these issues, but cost is a big component. So we put together some documents, we ran some calculations. We put together some documents to show you how this is going to work out if you go with either option 1 through 5. Is there a way we can have that?
Yes. I'm asking, Jay, can you please pull up the bridge feasibility report onto the screen so folks in the audience can see what we're discussing?
Yes, stand by.
All right, well, they're working on it. So a little background on the bridge. The bridge, you probably know more than I do, but it's believed to have been built in 1950. The bridges that we design today, they are usually designed for minimum 75-year life, service life. So if you go by that rule, we're almost at the end of the service life of this bridge. Even though bridges back then, they weren't built with the with the factors that we're using today. Today's factors are way more conservative than back in the 50s. So we developed 5 bridge alternatives. One of them is a rehabilitation, and the rest of them are replacement options. The rehabilitation option, we're looking at a deck replacement that upgrades the bridge railing to the current standards. It addresses the corrosion on the girders. We clean and repaint the girders. And most importantly, we address the scouring channel. It's either by, we're showing riprap over here. This is a very preliminary design, but it could be riprap or some like soldier piles or something like that, just to fix the scour. But it's a lot of work in the channel, and that's why we started looking at replacement options, because of the complexity of construction and the cost of it. If you move on to alternative 2. Thank you. So this alternative is a single span prefabricated truss. We have been talking with Contech, who probably most of you are familiar with the firm. They provide prefabricated truss and steel bridges mostly. And this is this picture shows one of the structure types that we're considering for Bellum Bridge. Probably about the same length. Next page, please. So this sheet shows a plan and profile. Again, these are all preliminary design. On top, sorry, scroll back up. So with all of our replacement options, we wanted to address the retaining wall that is at the southwest corner of the bridge, right next to Minturn Anglers. Is that what it is? Yeah. So the retaining wall is in poor condition, and you can see that sharp angle is it's basically blocking most of the south span, making it practically useless for most part. So we are shifting for all replacement alternatives. We are shifting the south abutment just enough to clear that wall, and we just take it out of the equation. That way we will have a shorter bridge and therefore less expensive bridge. Can we scroll down, please? I'm not going to go into much detail, but this is a preliminary typical cross section of the truss. You can see there's a sidewalk outside of the truss members. All of our replacement options, we included a 5-foot sidewalk on the east side, and yeah, next please. Alternative 3, this is very similar to the structure that is in place right now in terms of type of structure. It's a steel girder bridge, but the difference will be that this is a single span. The existing bridge has 4 spans. Eliminating those piers will help with hydraulic analysis, with hydraulics and hydraulic opening under the bridge. And also it reduces the cost because we're not going to have any intermediate piers in the channel. That also helps with maintenance in the long run because those piers are, as you can see on the existing bridge, those piers are always prone to settlement, scour, debris accumulation, and all sorts of stuff. Next page, please. Again, the south abutment is shifted towards north. Nothing special on this page. Here's a cross section of that of the alternative 3. As you can see, we have another alternative that has the same type of structure, steel girders, but it has 2 spans. So the girders are going to be much shallower than this. We just wanted to have both options to show that we're not leaving any option off table right now. There are some utilities attached to the bridge. One of them is extremely dangerous. It's XL gas, and it's a couple of feet lower than the existing low chord of the bridge. Meaning if during high water season, if there is a debris in water, it's gonna hit that gas line first before it hits the bridge. That's why we included utility conduits, if you can see in the curbs and in the sidewalk, to accommodate those utilities within the bridge itself, so they're not exposed anymore. Next page, please. This is the alternative I was talking about. It's the same type of structure, steel girders. It's just it has a intermediate pier. So we have 2 spans. When you break the length of the bridge, when you put a pier, you break the length, and when you have shorter span, you can use shallower girders. And with this bridge, because of all the restrictions around the bridge, all the buildings, the main street is a couple of feet, is practically connected to the bridge. We don't have a lot of room to raise the bridge and provide that hydraulic opening. So the shallower the structure, the bigger hydraulic opening in this case. Next page, please. Again, plan and profile. If there are any questions about these sheets, I'm just going over them pretty quickly, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Next page, please.
Do you want us to wait till you're done?
I'm sorry?
Do you want us to wait till
No, please, whatever.
Well, alternative 3 looks like the cleanest one. And it would be kind of nice to have a clear opening. But it's also one of the most expensive alternatives. So the truss, the truss or the concrete ones are $1 million cheaper. Am I reading this correctly?
That's correct.
What makes alternative 3 so expensive?
So that's a very good question. Actually, I forgot to mention this. Alternative 2, even though it looks bigger and you see all the bridge components, that's a prefabricated truss. So it's prefabricated at a plant, and it's shipped to the site. So it's much cheaper. But alternative 3, you're gonna have to assemble all those girders there are a lot of connections in steel girder bridges. There are a lot of assembly times. The construction duration is longer. The steel itself will be more expensive because of all the connections, all the welding, bolts, and all of that. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, and my other question is, do you think 4A or 3, are 3 is better?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
What's the advantage of having 2 spans versus 1 span? They seem to be the same price.
Yeah, so the biggest difference would be, I would say, in this case, we added that, like, we don't, let me back up for a second. So the bridge length is about 80 to 90 foot, 95 foot. The bridge is about 95 foot long. So, and we don't usually need a intermediate pier for this long of a bridge. But in this case, because we needed that hydraulic opening, we added that pier to use a shallower structure. If you look at the cross sections, if you compare alternative 3 and alternative 4A, the girders in alternative 3, they are 36, I believe, 36 inches deep versus alternative 4A, where we have the intermediate pier. It's a 2 span. The girders are 18, I believe, 18 inches deep. So we are creating more room under the bridge to have that hydraulic opening. Hydraulics are very important for this in this project because Eagle River is a FEMA regulated channel, and since we are applying for a grant, CDOT will probably want to have a freeboard, a 2 feet freeboard in the channel, and I can explain what the freeboard is. So imagine during high water, and when we say high water is, we're assuming 100-year flood event. During that event, if there are any debris in the water, they're going to be floating on top. And CDOT requires 2 feet between the high water level and bottom of the girders. 2 feet gap just for the debris, so the debris doesn't hit the girders. And when we try to do that, we need that opening. We need to increase that vertical clearance under the bridge to create that freeboard, to meet that freeboard requirement.
Do you know what the current bridge, what the freeboard is on that?
Yes, it's negative.
It's a bad start.
It's negative. I believe 9 inches, meaning
Really?
during a 100-year event, water is going to be 9 inches above the bottom of girders.
So between 4A and 3, meaning 1 span or 2 spans, which would you choose?
Well, Councilmember Feiger, if I can just quickly ask if Jay can go to the Bridge Alternative Decision Matrix page, which is also known as Attachment 3 and has red, yellow, and green markings to identify which alternative SEH is recommending. That could help the conversation, and then I don't know if the mayor wants to go down the road because SEH is recommending alternative 2.
Do you not like the look of the
They're
truss?
recommending 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you not like the look of the truss above? Is that what you're Yeah, I think it would be cool.
Could that be lowered, like on alternative two? Could the side, trusses, the arch be made lower? Cause it does look pretty industrial there.
That's just an example.
So that's another advantage that comes with truss structures like that. Because the structure is above the bridge deck, you have shallower structure depth, and by structure depth I mean top of concrete deck to the low chord of the bridge. That's the advantage you get with trusses, and that's not the only advantage. I'm sure Lynn wouldn't agree with me, but those truss bridges are known for their looks and their appearances, and especially if you go with a weathering steel.
But could the truss part, the upper part, be a little lower? Does it have to be as high as what's in that photo?
Oh, that's just a recent project that contacted in I believe in somewhere in Denver, but no, that's just a.
It would be helpful to see what other truss bridges look like, because that's lacking any familiarity. I don't know what the choices among truss bridges.
That
I kind of like the look of this.
Yeah,
Really,
it's great.
I mean, it has kind of a railroad kind of look, you know? and-
Make it.
Does moving the south abutment change the entry onto Highway 24?
I don't believe so. No.
And then did you consider alternative widths at all? Does that change anything, or did we just go with replace straight what's out there?
What it is now, basically.
And alternative 2 is the only one that has that cantilevered sidewalk.
Yeah, which is
Yes.
And what happens with the utilities on that, or do they run underneath?
Yeah. Usually they're attached to underneath of the trusses.
Yeah, the drawing says cantilevered, right?
Yes. Correct. And the width of the bridge, as Jeff mentioned, I was under the understanding that the town is leaning towards a narrower bridge to limit the vehicle speeds on that road. And the lowest that we can go is 11-foot lanes. We have to have 2 lanes, and we have to have 2-foot shoulders on each side. That's minimum. So when you add that up, that's going to be the same as the existing 26-foot clear.
And we're already utilizing an easement with the Minturn Saloon for that northern exit or entrance to the bridge. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If we were to look at trying to widen the bridge, I think it would be for the purposes of widening the multimodal transportation option of bikes and pedestrians, maybe more than 5 feet wide for bikes and pedestrians. But I think we would look at leaving the lane width, the 11 feet that we've been discussing.
Michelle, we've discussed it at several times about the lane width. The narrower roads tend to promote traffic calming. People drive slower when the road's narrower than when it's wide, so that's part of the thought process that went into the narrower lanes on the bridge.
Yep, but again, we're just looking for approval for design and engineering tonight. So this is all.
Yeah,
this is strictly, we're all in agreement to submit a request for a grant. That's all this is. This is not to determine what bridge we want at all.
And on that note, Eric will make a motion to approve resolution number
Thank you.
Yes.
3, Series 2024, resolution in support of the Colorado Department of Transportation Off-System Bridge Program, funding for the planning and design of the replacement of Bellum Bridge, Minturn Taylor Street within the town of Minturn, Colorado.
Second.
Okay, I'll go with Eric on the motion and a second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
Is Resolution 54, series, does anyone need to take a recess?
Sure, for 5 minutes.
We'll take a 5-minute recess, please.
When they pulled all that out.
Okay, we're back in session.
In here or elsewhere? Out in the lobby?
Are you ready? Okay, next item on the discussion is a series of conditional use permits for the rail yard. The first one is Resolution 54, Series 2024, a resolution approving the renewal of CU 92-2018 for the Cousins Construction Company.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madison will be presenting all of these conditional use permits, which are all in the same area and all relatively the same. So with that, we do by law have to open each conditional use permit up for the formal public hearing, but I think the heavy lifting of the discussion will probably occur for this first one, and then the rest should be a rather repetitive in nature so as to keep the meeting moving along. With that, we do have one public comment that we will read now into the record that is reflective of all the conditional use permits as a whole and not specific to any one conditional use permit, just to keep that in mind. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Madison.
Did you want me to read the public comment now?
No, when he opens it up for public comment.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is for specifically CU 02-2018 Cousins Construction. However, I hope you'll have noticed that my staff report covered 4 of the 5 CUPs, the first 4, as they are specific to contractor and construction storage. So this is something that's been going on for ever since 2018. I believe in 2017, Scott Hunn and Kathy Biggs, the current code compliance officer, they worked together to bring the rail yard lessees into compliance, as there were no conditional use permits until that time, but they had been operating leases from Union Pacific for several years by that point. So in 2018, each lessee was granted a conditional use permit with 18 different conditions that they had to abide by. Most notably in that original iteration was that only construction vehicles were allowed to be on site. There were nothing like ATVs or trailers or anything like that allowed. Also, there was the original CUPs had a different way of dealing with violations. Any notice to the lessee counted as a violation. There was no opportunity for them to fix the issue, and so 3 violations in 1 year could accumulate fairly quickly. And so when all of the CUP holders came in 2021 for their first official renewal, staff and council took a look at the approved conditions for all of the CUPs, and staff actually met on site with the CUP holders to go over how we can hopefully make the conditions better and more able for the lessees to abide by. And so as part of that, we did, council did amend some of the conditions, and the 2 that I brought up specifically is that now snowmobiles, ATVs, and dirt bikes and things of that nature are allowed to be stored on site. However, we still don't allow anything like RVs or anything that somebody could be living in. Also, the change was that any complaint or notice given to the lessees of, hey, you've got unregistered vehicles on your property, for example, they now have 30 days to correct that before it counts as a violation. And thankfully that has worked fairly well over the last few years. Whenever we received a complaint and went out to investigate, staff would send a notice to whichever specific CUP holder the complaint was about. I mentioned unregistered vehicles because that was the majority of the complaints. And so we would contact the CUP holder and say, hey, we received this, here's pictures, please correct this within 30 days. And 201, they've all been fairly responsive and they've corrected them within the time frame given, and so no official violations have been issued within the last 3 years. So the CUPs, even though this is a renewal, they still technically need to they still need to comply with the criteria that conditional use permits operate under as a whole in the town, not just the one specific on the rail yard. So the different criteria that conditional use permits have to meet is that the relationship and impact of the use on the community development objectives of the town. So as you'll see in the staff reports, staff has cited a few different areas where we believe that the community plan does support the continuance of these CUPs. Specifically, I want to point out in Chapter 3 of the 2023 Imagine Minturn Community Plan, it states that in Minturn, construction and related trades make up almost 40% of jobs in the town, compared to 10% in Eagle County. And also, again, construction and trades, again, represent a large proportion of businesses ranging from general contracting and construction businesses to heavy construction, as well as high-end custom woodworking, cabinetry, and flooring. So 40% is quite a bit, and I am aware that these CUP holders contribute quite a lot to that percentage, just based on their businesses as well. Criteria B, or the item that we evaluate against B, the effect of the use on distribution of population, transportation, utilities, schools, parks, and recreational facilities, and other public facilities and public facility needs. So the current operations on UP property, inclusive of parking and requested storage uses within the lease boundaries, have minimal impact on those things. Our staff believes they have minimal impact. The effect upon traffic, again, staff does not believe that there is much effect on traffic. They do operate on one way in, one way out, and it is my understanding that there might be a little bit more traffic between 7 and 8 a.m. And 5 p.m. as the landscaping companies leave and come back during the summer, but not to the point where I believe it's caused any undue issues. Subsection D, the effect upon the character of the area in which the proposed use to be located, including the scale and bulk of the proposed use in relation to surrounding uses, the amount of noise, lighting, and glare, dust, and compatibility of the use of the character area it is in, and surrounding areas. So this is in a historically industrial-like area, and so staff believes that this is not an undue business to have in the area. So under necessary findings, council must find that the proposed location of the use is in accordance with the purposes of this chapter, meaning chapter 16, the community plan, and the purposes of the zone in which the site is located, that the proposed location of the use and the conditions under which it would be operated or maintained will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or materially injurious to properties or improvements in the vicinity, and that the proposed use will comply with each of the applicable provisions of this chapter, again, chapter 16. So it is staff's belief that as the CUP has been granted twice in the past for each of the CUP holders, that all of these criteria can be met. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just for clarification, we can just say yes or no to the resolution, right? Instead of reading out all the findings?
Yes, because the findings are within the resolution.
Thank you very much. Okay, go ahead. You had more to say?
Yes. Actually, okay, I'm going to give the whole presentation inclusive of all four? Okay, yes. So as I said earlier, enforcement has mainly been about unregistered vehicles and also actually green screening. That has been a struggle for a lot of the CUP holders, I assume due to, you know, the gale force winds that we often see ripping through town, especially in spring and fall. And then specific to the Burke Harrington Construction and Darren Teholke CUP, I would like to, I wanted to bring council's attention to this so that staff could get direction and also so that Burke and Darren could also get direction. So condition 1 states no vehicle shall exceed 40 feet and 2 inches in length. This restriction does not apply to storage containers that may be used for storage of materials and equipment associated with or incidental to the business operations approved under the CUP. Such containers must be maintained in an orderly manner, must be contained and screened to the greatest extent possible with fencing and green mesh screening materials, and shall not be stacked. The reason why I brought this particular condition to y'all's attention is that there is a type of structure that has been erected at the Burke Harrington and Darren Teholke CUP. They've put 2 storage units and then essentially put plywood in between them and then built a roof about 18 inches above the, about 12 to 18 inches above the storage containers. So there is nothing within the conditions of any of the CUPs that necessarily prohibits this. I don't believe that this was necessarily contemplated the last time these CUPs were reviewed. And the only thing that I could find within those conditions to limit any kind of, or provide any kind of height restrictions was that shall not be stacked portion of condition 1. Obviously, if you look at this, this is nowhere near to as tall as it would be if they were stacked. But I certainly did want to bring that to y'all's attention so that I could get direction and so that the CUP holders could get direction on whether or not this is something that would be allowed. So yes, that is my presentation. I have provided all of the resolutions with the conditions as they existed in 2021. So if there are any recommended changes, I can certainly put those in.
Okay, I would suggest that with Burke and Darren's particular CUP, we'll wait and talk with them about that. Okay, so is there any other questions on the Cousins CUP? Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I appreciate your history and everything of it, and thanks.
By the way, he built the pergola in the Midtown Gardens. Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, if there's no more further comment, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion. Yes.
Sorry, am I missing something?
Public comment?
It's a
This is a
resolution.
resolution. Anybody want to make a comment? Okay.
I
Anybody?
have David Claps to read into
Oh, you
the
have
record.
somebody, okay, with a hand raised, okay. David, you there?
No. I apologize. I'm reading his comment into the
Oh.
record.
Go ahead.
Okay. So David Clapp, thank you, council, staff, and neighbors. Sorry I can't make it to the meeting this evening. I'm really sorry I missed the meeting 3 years ago. I was unpleasantly surprised to find that it was decided to allow cargo containers in the rail yard at that meeting. I don't understand why. Minturn put in an ordinance ridding cargo containers years earlier. Problem solved. Why was the town ordinance exemption given to someone that doesn't vote, pay taxes, or a water bill? 5 or 6 years ago, 2 cargo containers got dropped off, blocking my little glimpse of the Eagle River when it rises in the spring. One of the containers is advertised as owned by Southwest Mobile Storage. It infuriates me that Southwest Mobile Storage has more rights than I do in Minturn. I also am confused as to why snowmobiles, trailers, boats, etc. were made allowed to be stored there at the last meeting. Why do we want to store the stuff not allowed in the driveways of Eagle Vale? I don't want to look at it either. The rail yard looks the worst now as it has in the 25 years I have lived on Taylor Street. A Google Earth timeline of the yard would be interesting. Watching the piles of tires, scaffolding, asphalt accumulating through the years. This is a new policy starting 6 years ago that has failed. It is not or should not, or it It is not or should be considered keep Minturn. Please clean it up. Remember that the railroad, its tenants, and subleases don't pay taxes or vote when making rail yard decisions. Please do what's best for the town and its residents, unlike what went down in the meeting 3 years ago. Thank you, David.
Any other letters or anything? Okay. Thank you, Madison.
Back to where we were. Make a motion to approve resolution number 54, series 2024. Renewing conditional use application CU 02-2018 for Cousins Construction, UP Railroad Avenue, Town of Minturn.
I'll second that.
Motion by Tom, a second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, resolution number 54 is done. Next is resolution 55, series 2024, a resolution approving the renewal of CU 012018 for Minturn Builders Alliance Cooperative. Are they here? Okay, basically the rules go the same thing. Is there any further questions or comment on this?
I have just a question for all of the permit holders. If anybody wants to discuss it, you don't have to. I get it that you're a lessee. The railroad continues to be an interesting neighbor of ours in the town, and I'm wondering if we went through a process that we were offered some short-term 1-year leases or month-to-month, and I was wondering if any of you have heard any offers of longer-term leases or anything in your communications with UP. I'd love to have any background you have on that, because I think that is preventing investment and some just stability in the area. So if you want to.
Thank you, council members and staff. Reed Phillips. I'm the representative from Minturn Builders Alliance Cooperative. Going in my 16th year with renting from UP, we've only had 1-year leases the whole time. We've asked for additional leases. We've actually asked for purchasing rights to our particular lots and property. Those have all been denied. Union Pacific is an interesting partner in this process. They don't necessarily invest any money in the property itself. All the maintenance of the road, we spend in the neighborhood about $10,000 a year maintaining the road and the various properties, whether it's the screening, painting of structures, maintenance of those areas. I understand that Dave has certain issues with what we're doing there, but I beg to differ of what that looked like previous to us coming in as tenants. Anyone that remembers the Fred Holtz area and some of the other areas, it's better to have active tenants that are there, cleaning it up, maintaining it, enforcing the area. Vacated property that isn't necessarily have tenants tends to squatters, dumping of property, abandoning their vehicles. But to answer your question, yeah, they've never offered us anything, and I am rolling into my 16th year of a lease. I think Berkey's actually longer than me. We've never been offered anything greater than that 1 year, year to year. It does, I know for the hotel, and these guys can speak about it, you know, they put quite a bit of money into that property, and to only have a 1-year guarantee is a little scary. But we continue to invest in it because it's a vital part of our businesses. We do feel like it's also a vital part of the valley, because it does keep that equipment, those trailers, those ATVs, those snowmobiles out of driveways, and maybe gives a viable place for them to store, plus all our construction equipment. Yeah, I appreciate you guys looking at this. 3 years ago, we did refine the initial code. I think the initial code was kind of a jumping off point. Council and town staff, we worked really hard to refine it down to something that was far more manageable for the town and for us to stay in compliance. And I think the fact that you don't have any compliance violations from any of the CUP holders over the last 3 years is kind of an indicator of policy that works. So again, thank you guys for your consideration. If you have any other questions, let me know if I can answer them. But we appreciate you guys looking at this. The only other thing we'd like to throw out, and we should have emailed this earlier, is whether or not you guys wanted to extend the period from 3 to 5 years, and we can come back. But that's something that understanding resolutions cause I do a little bit of work like that to the east of you guys. I understand that's something probably that can be approved at this meeting, so. Any other questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Wait,
Appreciate the
Rita, I have a
information.
question for you.
Yeah.
It's just sort of, like, one of the only things that seemed to be a challenge was the green screening. Is there something better?
No, we
Okay.
now have moved to a reinforced screening with reinforced eyelets and more zip ties, which cost about 3 times more than the original screening that we used. But between trying to move the snow
Yeah.
that stacks on the fence and the screening and the winds that we get through there, yeah, I say that we tender our fence the start of the spring, in the kind of midsummer, going into the end of the fall, and we start over. So we try to pull our fencing and screening up at least 2 to 3 times a year. I think last year we spent about $1,000 on new green screening.
Yeah, I'm
to
just
replace
curious
the
if there's like, if you've encountered something that's does the same thing but isn't.
No, and I
as
talked to
terrible
Strategic
maintained.
Fence, who is
Yeah.
kind of the main fencing, construction fence authority in
Yeah.
Colorado, and they're like, this is the best that's currently available.
Bummer.
We tend to try to buy the better brands, because there's certainly some cheaper brands that come out of the Far East that aren't great. So we buy the nicer stuff, but it just doesn't.
Yeah, it's tough.
You get about a year's worth of longevity out of it, and that's Strategic. We've asked them if they had any ideas for better screening. It's just you got to maintain it a little more regularly. So, thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, is there any further questions on resolution 55? No, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 55, a resolution renewing conditional use application CU 01-2018 for Minturn Builders Alliance Cooperative, UPRR Railroad Avenue, Town of Minturn.
8 seconds.
Motion by Gusty, second by Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Great. Next, we have resolution 56, series 2024, a resolution approving the renewal of CU 032018 for Burke Harrington Construction. Any further questions?
Nope.
Actually, Bert, and Darren, if y'all have any, I'd just like to ask some questions about the structure that y'all have out
That's
there.
that's the next one.
That's the other one.
That's the next
There's
one.
one combined?
Yes.
Okay, never mind. Okay, any further questions from here?
No.
Motion?
Public hearing.
Public hearing.
Resolutions, you don't have to. Okay, any comments from the public?
Bless you.
Close. Make a motion to approve resolution number 56, series 2024. Resolution CU 032018 for Burke Harrington Construction, Upper Railroad Avenue, Town of Minturn.
Motion by Tom, second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And now, this resolution 57, series 2024, a resolution approving the renewal of CU 012020 for Burke Harrington Construction and Darren Taholke. So,
There we go.
Darren and Bert, y'all want to come up and just, I just want to understand what the structure, what y'all did with the modification of your storage areas.
Is this referring to what Madison brought up?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a picture of that?
Jay, will you
So
put
it's,
up the picture on page 9 of the staff report for, that was in the first resolution?
so basically, there's 2 storage containers and we just connected them with some framing to make more shelter and painted it green. So if there's a picture that can be shown.
And it's like substantially shorter than the building it's right next to.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, like visually.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
It's just an efficient use of a threshold
So,
cover for 2 containers.
kept it the color,
Yeah.
green screen.
Cool.
Okay, that was just to give you more storage between the two.
Shelter.
Shelter to get in.
So we're just wondering if that can stay.
Any concerns from council?
No.
I mean, I think it's a pretty clever use of what you have there.
The town is already currently utilizing a similar structure at our own lease lot. Just
Well, then we can't let them have that.
Equally clever.
Yeah.
Okay, you can sit down now.
We were also hoping to extend from 3 to 5 too, also, if,
Could put that in,
that was a chance of that, so.
just takes up less of your time.
Agreed, but we have to separately go down that route, don't we, later?
No, that's an amendment that can be made now if you so choose.
Okay, would you restate that again? I didn't quite catch all of it.
5-year term instead
We
of
were,
3-year
we were
term.
just, going back to what Reed said, with 0 violations, and then the combined efforts of all of our mailings and the labor intensive, the last couple weeks, I mean, we spent over $2,700 between everybody doing these mailings. Probably used about 3 trees and a bunch of colored ink. So we're hoping that you guys maybe consider stretching out the CUP maybe to 5 years. And we all, we're still operating underneath the same rules. If there's 3 violations in a year, you guys can pull the CUP. But since we haven't had any problems, we're hoping to maybe extend that out to 5. We're asking for 5, but 10 would be cool, but.
You only have a lease for 1 year.
Save the earth.
Never hurts to ask over 50.
Right, Earth, we're saving the earth.
Considering you have to go through the UP process yearly, there's nothing wrong with doing 5 years.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I feel like I would like to get y'all's input on that.
And
Deal with it.
And we are supportive of a 5-year renewal process, knowing that, at complaints that come in, we can go out and independently inspect at any time and then submit the request to have it cured within 30 days. One thing I will identify is this is, I believe, the last of the CUP hearings and the only one that would include the 5-year renewal, as all of the other resolutions have already been approved under the 3-year timeframe.
Can we amend them?
You can. Yes.
Is there a way to just retroactively reset everything at 5 years tonight?
How do we do that?
What language do we need to tell you?
Mike, where's Mike when you need him?
So without having Mike here, putting my Mike hat on, but trying to find some efficiency to this process, acknowledging that we can go back to the resolutions 54, 55, and 56, reopen them all as a group, identify they all remain approved as amended to include a 5-year renewal instead of 3.
So don't we need to approve 57 first and then lump all?
Yes,
4?
I was just telling you what you could do after that.
So on that note, I make a motion to approve resolution number 57, series 2024, Burke Harrington Construction and Darren Tolke, UP Railroad Avenue, Town of Minturn.
I'll second that.
Motion by Tom, second by Gusty.
Amended for the
I'll
5
get
year.
that. We'll get there.
Do them all once.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I would like to also follow up and make an amendment to all the resolutions 54, 55, 56, and 57 to change the term of renewal to 5 years.
8 seconds.
Would that include the Minturn Mountain Motel?
Haven't gotten there yet.
The Minturn Mountain Motel is separate,
Animal.
Is separate.
but they may also request a 5-year renewal if they should so like to do that.
We can do that.
Right there. So there's a second on the table, waiting on a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Earl. Aye.
Let's get them apart quickly.
Just keep track.
Passed, moving on.
Good suggestion, thank you.
There's no use, people. Okay, next we have,
Michelle's just
we gotta
leaving.
still come back
Set
to
enough.
57. No, 58, excuse me.
58.
Yes. Are they here?
Yes, Ryan with the Minturn Mountain Motel is here. This is a slightly different CUP. It is not all just, it is not contractor storage. It's mainly actually for parking and it's specific for the restaurant and motel. So you'll notice they actually have slightly less conditions. They have 17 as opposed to 20. The majority of them are the same, but that's why we've separated out the construction, contractor storage, CUPs, and the one for the Minturn Mountain Motel. Other than that, they're pretty identical.
And no problems?
No problems. They've addressed everything very quickly when we've notified them.
Okay.
Are they on a 3-year rotation also?
They are.
Would you rather have yours at a 5 also, or?
Darren told me to request a 15-year. 5, yes, is what we request, please.
Okay.
Is there anything that you'd request change, like in the same manner with fencing or whatever? Is there any changes that you would request in the parking and how it's managed next to our lots and the public lots and everything? Or is
No.
Good. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Motion?
Public hearing?
It's the last one.
Just for the record, that's not required on resolution.
Well, if that was the case, then we could put all these
believe
on
that it is on
consent
conditional
agenda.
No, I hate to digress. As the code requires for these, we are required to publicly notice and have a public hearing on these conditional use permits.
You two can have them on later. So on that note, public comments.
I guess I stand corrected. Okay,
Nothing.
now can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 58, series 2024. A resolution renewing an existing conditional use application CU04 series 2018 for Minturn Mountain Hotel, UPRR Railroad Avenue, Town of Minturn, and also like to add changing the review period from 3 years to 5 years.
Second.
Motion by Bestie, second by Tom. Unless Tim has any comments he wants to make.
No.
No,
Okay.
I'm not gonna get these recorded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I do have one request though. All
Yes.
these resolutions, the town of Minturn is now known as Menu Turn.
Maybe turn.
I didn't spell it. MINUTURN.
Menu.
Moving on.
We have a
Thank you.
proposal to change the name of the town.
No, no, we don't.
No, don't.
Okay,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ron.
Okay, next we have a discussion direction item. We discussed this at the last meeting. Since the last meeting, I've had some correspondence with James Flottam, and he's given me a lot of information that I wanted to bring him up here and present to council. And after he kind of covers some initial ground, I would invite council to ask any questions you like about the Western Rail Coalition. Go ahead, James.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Minturn Council, for having me. So yes, my name is James Flottam. I'm here on behalf of the Western Rail Coalition. I'm based in the Denver area, but I was asked effectively to help coordinate rail insights, specifically from kind of the railroaders in our network, right, to inform some advocacy opportunities and some advocacy ambitions to expand the mountain rail concept beyond just the Denver Bond Steamboat Craig train concept, which is being pursued right now at the state level, but also to make sure that we keep other communities on the agenda who might be interested in rail. What we have developed here is kind of what we consider to be a most viable first step. If the goal is at a state level, you want to create the biggest splash in terms of ridership, proof of concept, that rail can bring value to the residents of Colorado. One of the absolute strongest places to start, we think, is the northern section of the Tennessee Pass line. There's a few reasons for that. The first is that it is an inactive line. Right now, there is no freight traffic that operates on this line. However, it is still owned by a railroad, and it's still subject to federal requirements as a railroad. However, what changed in 2020 was that a lessee got a lease on the line from the Union Pacific Railroad, which is the owner of the Tennessee Pass line, which extends from Pueblo up to Dot Cerro through Minturn, is one of the communities in the Eagle River Valley. And what that changed was the ultimate kind of interest and potential use of the corridor, because the company that had signed the lease today, a subsidiary, actually operates passenger rail already, a very modern form of passenger rail that Coloradans as a whole have not had any direct experience with. It is a quiet, modern passenger rail service that operates multiple unit trains that are very quiet. These trains can operate by diesel, they can be powered by batteries, they can be operated operated with hydrogen, but they're not loud. Right, they're not the diesel locomotives that we're used to from 30 years ago. For those of us who were here back then, I certainly was not. But what folks are used to in a lot of Colorado, and including in Denver and downtown, you see these very, very loud trains that have pistons that are extremely, extremely loud. These trains that we're talking about in terms of passenger potential are as quiet as a normal city bus, so extremely minimally disruptive in terms of operation. So the opportunity of having a corridor that is not being used for transportation, but it is a transportation corridor that also happens to run through the densest part of the western slope of Colorado. Between Minturn and Gypsum, right, we have the densely occupied part of the state, on the western slope at least, and there is enormous potential to capture several major destinations in one shot. So going southbound from an active airport, right now the line actually is immediately adjacent to the Vail Eagle Airport. Immediately south of that, you have the Avon Town Center and the transit center there. That is kind of the jumping off and connection point for bus riders who are going to be going up to the Vail side. And in between that, you have several really important communities across Edwards, across Eagle, and of course Minturn, of folks who live up here, folks who experience the driving inconveniences of traffic, experience road closures, experience storms, right, that makes driving either dangerous or just undesirable, right? We have a massive asset that has been here all along and is not going anywhere. But right now, there is a lessee that has shown interest publicly, right, in operating passenger rail service. And I imagine sort of the elephant in the room that we will, of course, I expect get to in this meeting, right? There are absolutely valid concerns that folks up and down this valley have, that we've heard about the potential return of oil trains to the route. There's been suggestions of other uses in terms of converting the rail line into a trail. I think to address the first one, because this is so important, the contract is not public, but we've seen a lot of filings that make it very clear that the Rio Grande Pacific has expressed that they are not interested in operating any sort of oil, coal, or hazmat trains on this route. They've actually filed as part of their permit that they would prohibit these sorts of services on a through basis. So the idea of and concern about running trains potentially from Utah down to Pueblo and beyond is something that they as the lessee have expressed that they will not be doing publicly in these filings. Now, the owner of the railroad, the Union Pacific, turned off the line effectively in 1997. They did not abandon the line. It's technically a different term, but it's inactive. It's not running right now. And part of that is because of the geometry of the line. The steep grades of 3% are unprecedented, or they're not unprecedented, but they're extremely rare in modern railroading. It's extremely steep. It's extremely costly for railroads to operate trains over those grades. So the main reason that this line was taken out of service back in 1997 was that the Union Pacific Railroad, after they merged with the Southern Pacific and the Rio Grande, had two duplicative routes east-west in this part of the country. Immediately north on the Moffett line that goes to Denver, from Grand Junction, and then further north from there over the Overland route in Wyoming. So the Union Pacific doesn't have an immediate use for the railroad, but that said, it is a strategically useful corridor. So that's going to connect me to the second point about the potential that has been discussed about converting this line to a trail. Unlike other rail branches that have been taken offline over the years or abandoned, this is not a branch. What we are describing is a major east-west through connection that has major potential future interest as a mobility corridor, whether it be carrying local freight, whether it be carrying people. This is a very important strategic asset that is got value, if not for just its property that it operates on. We don't make corridors like this from scratch anymore, especially as private land has been parceled off to individual owners. It's extremely difficult to recreate these. So there is a major hesitance, especially since the mergers of Class 1 railroads have kind of quieted, at least in this part of the country, to truly abandon routes. Now, there are two ways that this route would ever stop being a railroad. The first is that the Union Pacific, the owner, would file for abandonment. If this happens, there are very restrictive federal regulations that kick in that result in them having to put the line up for sale before they actually decommission it. If that was to happen, right, it's very likely that they have a competitor that would bid for this route that would get a massively useful strategic asset to them because they do not have a nearby set of duplicative routes that they can run trains on, particularly for intermodal freight. So this is something that is of high strategic use to this rail owner's main competitor. They have no interest in going through the abandonment process as a result of not wanting to give their competitor a major strategic competitive advantage. The second is that they would sell the line to the state. This is hypothetically possible, exceedingly unlikely. The idea that this railroad, even if they're not using this asset, would request any less than full market value for the line, we have no evidence for why they would ever do that. And in terms of full market value for the line, it's very difficult to quantify exactly what that is, but it could be easily exceeding $300, $500 million. So $500 million, the idea that the state of Colorado would come up with $500 million to pay market rate to decommission a existing infrastructure transportation asset is something that is exceedingly unlikely you will get consensus for as the state as a whole for that kind of money. So really what we would encourage and what we're asking with this letter is to urge the governor, urge CDOT to look at this transportation corridor as a transportation corridor for people, which has not been done, which has not seen any passenger service since the early 1960s. Consider the value of this asset as it is, because it will not be, it is exceedingly unlikely that this asset will be anything other than a railroad in any of our lifetimes. But let's use this for the good of the people of Colorado, and let's explore what the costs and benefits are. Let's study this explicitly in the letter, and I want to call attention to this before I close and open for questions. This is not demanding we are going to prioritize service for this valley before other parts of Colorado. At this stage, we want to understand what the costs and benefits are. And I think as a state, there are huge opportunities to see a success in the valley. And I would argue that given the density and given the mobility needs and how rough road conditions can be and how disruptive road conditions can be, there is enormous opportunity for this, the town of Minturn. So with that, I'd like to pause and open the conversation.
I'd like to open it up for questions from the board.
Sure. Some questions of the language in your letter, for example, that are concerning. Return of the oil transport trains to the pass is exceedingly unlikely, as opposed to not going to happen.
Right.
Why the passive language?
So I am not a railroader. I do corporate finance, but I have a lot of friends and a lot of folks in my network who are. I run an advocacy group in Denver. That's why I was asked to help with this. The two scenarios that are likely, the only two scenarios that we have conceived of that would bring this line back into use, given that the Moffett line the UP owns is only at half capacity right now. In order to go through the major capital cost to rebuild replace a lot of the track, replace the ties, build signaling, we're talking major capital investment. The only reason that would happen is that there was an extremely urgent, probably a disaster of some kind. We're talking about we're talking about a major war. We're talking about the big one hits California at the same time as the Cascadia subduction zone goes, and we're having to funnel all the oil from North America that we can to California and the West Coast. So basically, short of a disaster, in the current market environment, there is no economic reason that we would expect that the Union Pacific would suddenly decide to change their mind and go to great capital expense to build up a duplicative set of capacity that they are not even fully exhausting, even half exhausting of their own immediately north of here.
Well, the original endeavor 4 or 5 years ago with Colorado Midland was to resurrect the length of the Tennessee Pass line for the oil fields you referenced earlier. Despite the fact they put language in there stating that they would prohibit it if they were to able to lease the line. But their vision is from Pueblo to the link in Dot Zero, is it not?
That is not. That is not the case. The lease does not actually extend all the way to Pueblo. It's just shy of that. So the other reason we believe that is exceedingly unlikely that you would ever see the lessee operate service is that basically in order to get a train from Pueblo all the way past Dot Zero, you would need to interface. The Union Pacific would have to interface with itself twice, interchange with itself twice. That is not done on their system as far as of anywhere I've seen. And you can, I very much encourage you to reach out to the lessee themselves, and they'd be able to kind of give you their take on this. I can't speak for them, but the idea of doing that would be exceedingly uneconomical.
So on the passenger piece, my only concern, I got the grade, but I don't believe the speed limit changes even with these newer trains. It's still a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. Or is that changed with this technology?
That is technically not correct. The track itself needs to be replenished. You're going to need to see some ties replaced. You're going to need to see probably some adjustments to other parts of like the ballast. The rails are actually very modern. The rails are younger than me. So in terms of operating efficiency, there are going to be sections of this line that if it receives investment will be far faster than that.
Well, you use the phrase back of the NACT, an estimate between $200 and $400 million based on other parts of the country, density wise. I mean, could be argued passenger volume in this corridor is just not ever going to be near the level to cover that expense, plus the Leadville to Minturn piece as far as operational costs, particularly in the wintertime, to maintain the track clearance. And obviously your request for this letter is to do some analysis on that?
Yeah, the scope of the analysis, we would like to look at the corridor, the full corridor from Glenwood Springs to Leadville. There's a few reasons for that. Even though it is likely that a much smaller section of that would be receiving the most frequent service due to the fact that between Dot Zero and Glenwood Springs, it is an active railroad. There are other trains that have to share that line. We want this corridor to be studied for multiple reasons, and multiple types of service may emerge as the kind that makes sense according to the analysis. But I would also kind of take a step back in terms of reasons for this. I would say that even if an individual person may be looking at this and say, hey, well, I don't think I'm going to ride this. I don't think this is going to be necessarily useful to me. I would urge that in the reality that we live in, where this is going to almost certainly remain a railroad and this is not going to be a trail. If it is the interest of the local communities here to do everything that they can to prevent the return of through oil trains to the route, I would urge that the most effective thing that this group and this body could do is support this letter, send this off, and let us succeed in bringing a new alternate use for the line, and let's fill up all the rail capacity with magnificently frequent, magnificently useful, modern European-style, quiet passenger service that will make the line even less attractive to the Union Pacific owner to ever want to reinstall through service on their route.
I have some questions. One is, how long a lease does Rio Grande have on this railroad section?
So we do not know the answer to that. There is evidence that it could be that they've got options to extend it for an extended amount of time. So we expect that if there is interest from the Rio Grande Pacific to maintain their lease, they could do so for a long period of time. We don't know what that is with precision.
I would think that that would be really important, foundational to doing anything in this planning in this area. And the concern I have, I mean, and I went through the video and all of that, is that, and you show all these pictures of these traffic jams and stuff, but what you're showing is I-70 between Denver and Vail. And that's a railroad. I would be all in favor of a railroad that took some of the pressure off of I-70. But this doesn't do that. I mean, this is a line that will eventually connect Canyon City with Dot Cerro running through Minturn. And from the standpoint of those of us who live in Minturn, I mean, it won't ever help us get to Denver. It might, well, we've got free bus service direct to Beaver Creek anyway. And, you know, to fix this railroad so that you could have any passenger train that operates at any decent speed, to fix the train tracks. I don't know if you've looked at this section, but it's what, it's been 27 years, and that railroad, I mean, almost the whole thing needs to be replaced. And I question the $200 to $400 million expense. I question whether it makes sense in light of, I mean, it would, the limited usefulness of this particular line, which, you know, gets us to Dot Cerro, but not anywhere else. And I just have a lot of concerns. And also, if you don't even know the amount of the lease, the extent of the lease, I'm concerned that at some point Union Pacific would conclude that it's much more profitable to terminate this lease and instead put heavy oil, you know, run the heavy oil trains through it, which there's all that pressure. And I'm also questioning the timing, because right now there's a Supreme Court case that's pending on whether or not the the train operation involving heavy oil has to, whether the it's not downstream, but downline impacts, environmental impacts, have to be considered. Now, if that we were to lose that lawsuit, I might be much more interested than this. But as it stands, I'm not sure it really makes sense, particularly because Minturn's such a narrow valley. So, I mean, the train is right in our face the way and I'm not sure the trade-off is worth it.
So you gave me a lot to go off of there, so I'll try to take that piece by piece. So the first thing is, as far as a train from here to Denver, right? I would love to see that. That was studied 10 years ago, and what was provided was a series of proposals between high-speed rail and maglev, which would cost tens of billions of dollars. That under, you know, in Tabor State, there was no remote path to funding that without radical change to our legislature and our legal requirements around raising capital. So I would love to see that. That is not coming anytime soon. And even if we had a modest set of proposals to improve access with rail between the Front Range and the Eagle Valley, there's going to be a requirement for a proof of concept, something that isn't going to require billions and billions of dollars, something that is realistic with the funding sources that have been put into place, like SB 230, that was a recent state initiative that it created state funding for rail. So there is state dollars that are coming to rail. The question is, where do we put it to have the biggest, most visible impact? So in terms of utility in the valley, right, I will acknowledge Core Transit, some of the other operators here, some of the private operators that provide service to ski resorts provide phenomenal service. As a Denverite struggling this summer, given the challenges that RTD's had, I'm jealous of the service that is provided up here. I wish we could look more like that in terms of frequency and convenience in more of Denver. But it's all about capacity, right? Is that a bus can only fit so many people, and especially during crush periods where core actually has a tremendous amount of ridership. The rail provides superior speeds, and it also provides more capacity. It can just carry more people with only one operator. And actually what we're seeing across the country is not that there's a shortage of vehicles, it's a shortage of operators. It's a shortage of people to run vehicles. That is true across transit agencies, especially post-pandemic. So what this does is this is inviting state resources to help pay for increases and improvements in local transit capacity. So that's kind of the first thing there. In terms of, the risk of expiring, the lease expiring and reverting back to just the Union Pacific, I mean, yes, that is part of the urgency with this, right? Is that if the lessee hypothetically does not have a business case to use the line, then they will let their lease lapse and they will go. They will leave, and we're going to be back to talking to the Union Pacific. And right, at least for the last several administrations of the UP, they have not viewed passenger service as a core part of their business. They're not interested in growing that organically themselves. So we're in a really unique position right now where we happen to have a lessee on the line who wants to do this. And this isn't something that we should take for granted is going to be the case in the future. Now, let's say, to take your point, yes, let's say that the resources were committed to this, right, in terms of the oil train risk, right? The world that we live in right now, and short of a disaster, which is technically possible, and that's why I say exceedingly unlikely. That's why I use that language, right? It's technically possible that we could have a massive disaster that causes the oil price to spike and we got to ship a whole bunch of stuff to California, right? That is technically possible. But what I would say here is that let's say that there was a period where demand on the Moffett line increased and they wanted to run more trains. What would require, if there was a profitable business, if the Rio Grande Pacific lessee was able to operate a line and cover its costs, and they fill the line with trains, really convenient modern service, right, it would create a level of friction, right, that would make it more difficult and less attractive for any other use on the line. Right, and that's what I would say is that even if you as individuals or others might not necessarily think that, oh yes, I'm going to use this line all the time, this is the best strategy that you can adopt to prevent oil trains from coming back on the line that you actually have control over.
Well, assuming you could do it for 400 million, which I doubt, I think it's probably more like twice that. For this short little line, to go from Leadville, I guess the first section would be Leadville to Avon.
Not necessarily. The first section that would probably be built would be between Gypsum and Minturn, would be the economical area that you could run service the most frequent. There's a few reasons for that, but ultimately the track is actually despite it having grass and weeds around it, is actually in phenomenal shape. It's going to be a matter of replacing ties. The rails are probably good. They're going to need to be signaling. But the other thing I would also consider is that the biggest expense in that 200 to 400 million number is modern, fully ADA compliant vehicles. That's the biggest chunk of that. If it's just the track, right, we're looking at a much, much lower expense that we could hypothetically see if a dialogue was initiated. We could see demo service that could cost a fraction of that. A demo service on this line that uses kind of used vehicles that were brought in from another line that perhaps this lessee owns could be brought in for less than 40 million.
These are old railroads?
Whoa, forgive me.
Your demo railroad?
Oh, a demo.
Basically.
What?
Older trains.
Older trains.
So something that they could borrow. I mean, hypothetically, again, I'm not
They'd
speaking for
be
them. I don't know.
noisier and all that too, probably.
Well, so I mean, the challenge that we have right now is that rail is experiencing a renaissance, right? There's a lot of demand for this, and it's difficult to procure new fleets for a lot of kind of the established, like Amtrak has had a really hard time with this. The wait for new vehicles for multiple units is actually quite short from what we can tell. There are orders that are there's a few different companies that offer these, but it's very possible from our perspective that you could see a demo service that could be spun up over the next summer or two that is technically feasible at a very small cost. assuming that the,
You wouldn't have to pay, I mean, it just seems like you'd have to pay a huge amount of money, like, you know, I don't know, $50, $100 to go down to Gibson and, where you can get almost free bus service there. It does, and that, I mean, I just can't see how this works.
well, what's cool about this right now is that there are state resources that are technically potentially on the table. Right, is that there's a large chunk of this cost that would not necessarily need to be paid by the valley to get started. There's also a whole host of federal grants that cover this sort of thing. Right now, we are in an environment where the infrastructure law that was passed in 2021, $550 billion of infrastructure money that's been flying around the country, and you've had East Coast states that have been very proactive, that have been vacuuming it up over the last couple of years around the Northeast Corridor. You have Eastern states that have established public transportation networks. They've been vacuuming these dollars up. And we've been, unfortunately, in Colorado, missing out on this opportunity. But to answer your question, it could be done for considerably cheaper than I think the number that you might have in your head.
Blaine, can I add something real quick? I want to talk like just in general, not about railroads at all. I think I have really, like, we are so far cart before the horse diving into theoretical blah 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 about railroad, and people have different opinions and things. We as a council, I think, owe a very public process, not just to our citizens, but for any potential project that would include a large swath of Eagle County, Leadville, all the way down. The fact that, and we spoke on the phone once, you're here, this is, I appreciate your energy and your kind of involvement on this. The fact that, we'll just go back up, the fact that an advocacy group for anything, it could be like Magpie Management in the town garden, I don't care. The fact that they sent a letter around and caused such a stir in Eagle County reflects really badly on Eagle County communities, I think, and I sent this concern to a couple of our county commissioners. I think it shows a real lack of leadership up here in coordination, specifically around this topic. As you know, the last time that these towns have gotten together really was to partner up on paying a lawyer to jump in on the Uinta Crude lawsuit. There's no, to my knowledge, ongoing multi-community committee focus group, working group. I mean, I think the Colorado Parks and Wildlife regional partnership approach is a really good model for this. So Colorado Parks and Wildlife is mandating through GOCO and CPW for different regions to get groups together and run community processes to look at the nexus of recreation and wildlife and things. So that's one example, right? So that's being led in a community. It's generating discussion in that community. It's getting different representatives from different nonprofits and organizations and governments and things like that. The fact that, this has come up twice now in council and has been noticed 1 or 2 days before, I think both times, it was like a relatively late addition. I personally don't feel like, and community survey hasn't really directly asked for Minturns' opinions on things. Just being here 5 years, I'm pretty sure I know what people think about trains in Minturn, but I'm not gonna go into that. We are so far, this is so far ahead of what we should be doing as a county, and I would call on. So I do not feel comfortable supporting, not making any sort of statements about rail, whatever, as a representative of the town of Minturn's people, because I don't feel like we've given an opportunity for them to come out and talk to us. I don't think the rest of the community has. So even if it was, I would love a rail from the airport to Dow Junction or Vail. I don't feel comfortable telling somebody in Avon that they should be considering that through their backyard, just as they shouldn't really be, doing that without coming down and sitting down with us and running some sort of process. So that's where I am on it. I don't know where this thing's gonna go. There's a lot to be done. Like I said, I appreciate your energy. I really appreciate you coming up here and you're driving this, and maybe you'd be a part of it. But it's really easy to spin up a website and start a 501c4 and put some maps on stuff. And you know, and show up, and it's, you know, the fact does remain, it's kind of like an out of area advocacy group is how you describe yourself, and I don't know if that should be driving the conversation locally on this important topic.
Well, considering, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You know, I'm kind of on the fence on this a little bit, but I feel a little bit more stronger about signing the agreement to actually research it, because that's all we're asking for, is just to have somebody look at it and have a professional group look at it, get their view on it, and see if it's even gonna work or not. Who knows? You know, economical, it might not be a go. I mean, it might not work. But I feel, I mean, I hope nobody takes us wrong, but us as a town of Minturn doesn't have any say with the railroad. If the railroad wants to do something, they're gonna say, who the heck's the town of Minturn? I mean, so I think we're spinning our wheels here. I mean, I support signing the letter, letting somebody, you know, spend whatever they want to spend on it to come back and say if it worked or not. We're not saying that, yeah, we're approving the railroad. We're, you know, what we're asked to do is to give a letter of support to actually look into it. And I can't see a problem with that.
May I add one thing?
Just a moment. Yeah, Brian, I just wanted to back up a little bit too as well. The impetus for me bringing this forward is because, to Gusty's point, we're not even near a process. I absolutely agree with you. There's nothing to look at. We can't look at anything until they do a study and look at it. And I've already told James that councils would support, if Rails to Trail becomes even a remote possibility, we're gonna support that, because I think all of us want that. But that said, in absence of that possibility, and, you know, it seems like, you know, reasonably sound logic to me, but I would want to have us say yes, just so that we've got a seat at the table, we can check in and see what's going on over there. But yeah, I mean, this could be, I don't know how, but if we saw the study, huh?
Where does it say that it's funding a study?
Sorry?
Where does it say in this letter that you're funding a study, that's the outcome?
Okay, yeah, that'll be a question from him, but all I want to say is, once they produce a study, we'll look at it, and then if we decide that this makes any sense at all, we will start the processes like we do on everything, all the other issues that we do.
So Western Rail Coalition you're completing a study, are you asking for funding for this, or do you have funding?
So Western Rail Coalition itself will not be completing the study. One of the big reasons that we're here is that there's only one entity in Colorado that really is structured with the expertise to be able to do this, and that's CDOT. And none of the local.
It's a four-letter word.
Based
But,
on,
you know, to
based
call
on
spade a
some of
spade.
your other language you've used, I would revisit that combination of expertise and CDOT.
Well, just to say, speaking honestly about it, none of the RPAs currently outside of Denver, right, at least in the mountains, you know, have rail people who would look at this, right? It's really important. Sorry?
It's RPA.
It's a transit agency, a transit authority with rail experience. So basically the one group that you would, that would be able to do this in today's environment would be the four-letter word, as you say.
Well, where does the Surface Transportation Boards fall on this?
In terms of the federal requirements?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, there is going to be a process, right, that the lessee would, assuming that a dialogue is started, right, and our goal, right, is that a dialogue is started between the state of Colorado and the lessee, and then the Union Pacific at some point, where they will discuss what possibilities exist, what the costs are going to be, and a study will be funded. And then, kind of to the point that's been made earlier, right, we will have much more precise language to say, hey, you know, the constituents are asking how much this is going to cost or what this is going to be like. We'll actually have some informed answers to give them. And that's the goal on the backside of this. But yeah, Western Rail Coalition it's a group of predominantly Western Slope and Arkansas River residents. I, as James Flatham, have been helping them coordinate and get railroader insights. So my role in this has been quite limited.
Well, two questions on that. This coalition of residents, I guess it would bring into question, to be pointed, The problem I see with this, as many other members of the valley here, as much as I lived in Europe, I got it. Would love to have that set up, but that is not how the United States is constructed. As much as I'd love to see that change up in this area based on geographic distances, highly questionable, other than short rail setup. But to be honest, to me, I look at this unfortunately as a wolf in sheep's clothing, specifically because at the end of the day, if at some point this line is resurrected, money talks. And despite your constant reference to a disaster, oil, petrochemical running on this line, highly possible, because guaranteed profit margin per car is infinitely higher than a subsidized eco rail for passenger service. That's just a fact based on passenger service in the United States as we know it, with the exception of very tight urban centers like the Northeast Corridor.
I think that's an honest assessment of this, but I would also urge you to look at it in a different way of what is in your control and what is not in your control, right? And I think what we would be appealing to this body to consider is that there is one thing that you do potentially have in your control, which is to direct the state to look at a different use of this line that is within the legal and financial realities of the world that we live in today. And I would submit that this idea is the best strategy that you guys have for that.
And you know, before I could support this, I mean, I agree with Brian. I would have to see that Minturn residents wanted this, and it's not clear to me at all that Minturn residents would want us to get our foot in the door and to support studying this. I think there's a whole process. I don't think residents in Minturn are really got the notion that, I mean, I know that this was put on the agenda in the last minute, but I don't think there's no one here from the public to talk about this. I just think we're really far from being ready to approve something supporting this kind of a study of a Eagle to Arkansas River Valley Mountain Rail concept.
Anybody else? Okay, so the only thing I would add is I have never heard a single whisper that Rail to Trail is going to be approved by UP. Matter of fact, they have told, our contacts have said that's not a policy of the UP.
But
so, I mean, if the problem is that we want to have Rails to Trail, if we can, we will. But if we can't, then this is an open track available for use by the UP.
But even though we don't have Rails to Trails, people use it as a trail. I look out my window and I can see in any given day probably 40 or 50 people walking along the railroad track. And if the railroad gets started, they would no longer be able to walk anywhere around there, and all the vegetation would be gone as well. But you know, we don't have many flat walking or easy walking places in town, and that's turning out to be a pretty important one.
Well, I think we're missing it. UP's, they're not going to convert it Rails to Trail, but UP's also not going to spend the money to restore the line. They ultimately want somebody else to spend that money to restore the line. That's the catch. So the reality is, as of 5 to 6 years ago, an insanely lowball number of $275 million
which basically equated to 1 million per mile on track, was the original estimate to restore the track. That is infinitely increased, plus the sale of the line per your improvement there. So at the end of the day, I just don't see anybody walking in the door shelling out close to $1 billion to restore and purchase the line. And UP is not gonna spend $500 million to restore the line. So it just sits.
So.
And I think like what we're being asked to consider today is whether or not CDOT, which is a state agency, is going to commit time and resources to a study without any sort of knowledge that our own community wants this done.
Right.
And that's the part that feels weird to me, right? Like I look at the 14 people on the Colorado Western Rail Coalition and I can identify 3 of them that would be affected by this rail line. So it feels like, to Brian's point, an outside advocacy group that has maybe a noble intention. Like I'm not totally opposed to better public transit here, but I have no sense that anyone in this valley actually has a desire for this. And so it's hard for me to think about supporting a commitment of our own government's resources to something that we don't even really want.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable putting my name anywhere near anything reactivating rail at the town because I don't feel comfortable with any sort of public process that's happened. So I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole unless, on behalf of the citizens of Minturn, unless we go through a process.
Well, and ultimately it comes from the various government representatives from the county on down, as directed by residents of the county. So
Honestly, I don't see the town of Minturn making a difference. I don't see the county making a difference. If it wants to happen, it's gonna happen. I will say it's not gonna do anything.
I got it. My point, and as Kate and Brian are bringing up, and I'm certainly there, nobody wants to see the rail line resurrected at all at this point. But again, back to the point, if we're gonna stand behind some coalition we know nothing about, it's gonna have to come from the voices of the citizens of the town before I sign up anyways.
Okay, so I think the council has spoken. I don't think of a study as being a public action, especially when we're not paying anything for it, but.
But we are, I mean, it's a state,
Pay
like,
money.
that would be like somebody saying, well, your town staff can just do a study and I don't pay for it. Like,
I mean, what if
we
you said-
pay for it.
Yeah, what if you said no? Like, what if it was the opposite? The letter said the town of Minturn asked them not to consider rail. Is that a thing, right? So, I don't know, you can go both ways. I just don't think we should take any action.
I guess one reservation I have with not signing it is if the railroad's gonna get mad at us and then all of a sudden screw us on our lease, you know, and I don't wanna see that happen.
They're not on this, they're not even involved here.
This has nothing to do with UP from that perspective.
They'll probably find out.
We just approved all their CUPs.
Yeah, so I don't think I need to ask for direction, James. I appreciate your efforts. And we'll move on.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next is future agenda items. Eric, you got something for us?
Yes. Michelle, if we could add a future agenda item to get the Climate Action Collaborative and Walking Mountains team to do a presentation on net zero building codes.
Are you bringing, you mentioned that there were some updates from the Eagle Valley Vail Valley Child Care. Is that coming?
Yes, those will be coming before you during the budget discussion.
Great, thank you.
So yeah, the net zero thing's a big deal. It'll help us, the Climate Action Collaborative, keep us on track for our goals of 50% by 2030 and 80% by 2050.
I have to check the numbers. It's been kind of in flux.
Has it changed?
I think so.
Okay, well, this is new. Anyway, have you looked at the future agenda items, and do you have any idea what the schedule might be on that?
It'll be in November.
November? Okay, cool. All right, well, next item, if there's no other future agenda items, the next item on the agenda is adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Oh my God.
Yeah.